Hi! Good day! My name is Emerson Manalili Gamboa from BPED 2A. On this video, I'm going to answer the Activity 1, Activity 2, and Activity 3 in the Music in K-12 curriculum. So, let's start! Activity number 1. First question. Choose among 6 periods in history of music, then elaborate how they contributed in music. First, I chose Classical period. We all know the classical period was only one short era in history of this tradition. In this period, saw the development of concerto, symphony, sonato, trio, and quartet. The mood of the classical period was one of the simplicity, balance, and logic. During this period, the merchant class became more affluent and influential. So music during classical period became less fanciful and cluttered than Baroque music. The balance, emotional restraint, and clarity governed pieces composed for the public concert hall and the homes of amateurs. The classical period marked the birth of the modern symphony orchestra. For the first time in history, instrumental music became more important than vocal music. So this period is one of the important periods because instrumental music was considered important by classical period composers. Vocal music, such as song for a singer and piano, choral works, and opera were also important during this period. Second, I chose Romantic period. The Romantic period started around 1820s and ended around 1900s. The compositions became increasingly expressive and intensive. So this period portrays literature, history, emotions, and nature. It described a cultural movement that highlights emotions, imagination, individualism, and freedom to express. So during the Romantic period, the orchestra had become a great force due to the increasing size, including the following: strings, woodwind, brass, and piano. Romantic musicians also experimented the advanced chord progression. This period is known for the intense energy and passion. The rigid forms of classical music gave way to greater expression and music grew closer to art, literature, and theater. The ideas and composition became more and more outlandish and inventive until the musical rules had to be rewritten and the scene was set for the biggest change in music for centuries, beginning of modernism. And lastly, third, I choose the 20th century. 20th century provided inspiration for the diverse of the musical style development between 1990 and 1999. So this period can be described a pre-reign for composer. The 20th century saw dramatic innovation in musical forms and style. Composer and songwriter explored new forms and sound that challenged the previously accepted rules of music of earlier period. Music in the 20th century changed dramatically due to the hostile political climate, advances in technology, and huge shifts in style. Question number 2. Among 6 periods, what is most notable in history of music? Explain your rationale. So for me, the most notable in history of music is Baroque period because Baroque music expanded the size, range, and complexity of instrumental performances and also established opera, cantata, oratorio, concerto, and sonato as musical genres. Also, the composer equipment with form, musical contrast, style and instrument, and they developed the opera and instrumental music. Many musical terms and concepts from this era are still used today. Activity number 2. Describe the music from each period with terms, words, and some names of composers in music history. First, medieval music. So medieval music was both sacred and secular. When we say sacred, these are music that are exclusive and used inside the church, while secular music are music that can be used inside or outside the church. Monody or monophonic music, meaning one sound or single line melodies. This describes the textures of the medieval music. Cantus firmus. Cantus firmus, a practice found both in church music and popular dance music. Frankish and Armenian composer were well known at that time, and they are the notable composer William de Machat, the inventor of 150 rhythmic notes. Leonine and Hildegard are the notable artists in this era. Gregorian chant, a monophonic or unison liturgical music in Roman Catholic Church. Medieval music has no rhythmic notation, no tempo, no dynamic, no meter, no major or minor key, and in mode with 4 vertical lines. Lute is one the instrument that used during medieval era. Renaissance period. Joachim Desprez is considered a great master of the polyphonic style. Orland de Lassus and Giovanni Pierluigi de Palestrina are famous musicians in this era. Ostinato, a repeated pattern or phrase. Polyphony has fully developed along with people being able to create any harmony. Melodic line, move in a flowing manner, so this describes the melody of the Renaissance music, expressed in moderate, balanced way with no extreme contrast of dynamics to the colors or rhythm. Rhythm is more gentle flow than a sharply defined beat. Clarity, balance, euphony within well-regulated limits prevails. This is golden period in music. Piano and guitar are several modern instruments slowly being developed and become ancestors of the instruments. Renaissance's grandest, most highly valued work of vocal music were polyphonic settings of the Ordinary of the Mass. The Ordinary Mass is composed of 5 texts: Kyrie, Gloria, Credo, Sanctus, and Agnus Dei that were included in every Mass. Next is Baroque period. The music became homophonic, which means melody should be supported by a harmony. Commonly known for complex pieces and intricate harmonies, this period was a time when composers experimented with forms, musical contrasts, styles, and instruments. J.S. Bach and G.F. Handel did eventually rule the late Baroque by combining Alfresius. Arrival of Queen Sheba by Handel, the most well-known Baroque piece for a string quartet. Monteverdi started experimenting with a new way of making polyphone music called the basso continuo. Basso continuo is a scaffolding sound that is played by a cello or harpsichord. Baroque became popular and successful because the Roman Catholic Church encouraged its development. Melodies sound elaborate and ornamental. This describes the melody of the Baroque music. Dynamic contrast alternation between loud and soft, also known as terrace dynamics. This is how the dynamics of Baroque period. Music genres: opera, oratorio, suites, toccatos, concerto grosso, and fugue. Violin, viola, double bass sharp, and oboe are prominent instruments present in this period. Next is Classical period. In this period also saw the development of the concerto, symphony, sonato, trio, and quartet. Influential new song from the sonato. The orchestra was firmly built. The music began include clarinet, trombones, and timpani. W.A. Mozart and J. Haydn dominated in this era by writing and performing hundreds of pieces in a rather small time space. Ludwig van Beethoven, crucial for transition between classical and romantic period, composed over 9 symphonies, 32 piano sonatas, and 16 string quartets. Franz Joseph Haydn, instrumental in development of chamber music, father of the symphony and father of the string quartet. Symphony, grand instrumental pieces performed by a large orchestra, often divided in several sections or movements. Concerto, similar to symphony but orchestra, acted as a backing for solo instrument. String ensemble, orchestra made up of only instruments. Next is Romantic period, golden age of the virtuoso. In this period, most difficult music would perform. Romantic musicians also experimented the advanced chord progression. In this period saw revival of the Italian opera. Beethoven played a big part in the making of this era. He is the most notable composer who made such huge contribution. Giuseppe Verdi and Gioacchino Rossini contributed the most to this revival of the genre. Mozart, 41 symphonies. Haydn, 109 symphonies. Beethoven, 9 symphonies. Niccolo Paganini, most famous violin virtuoso in this era. And Frédéric Chopin was known as the pit of the piano. In this period, composers would break the rules of form, utilize dissonance, expand instrumentation, not recycle compositions. And lastly, the 20th century. Free-rein composer show many innovation on how the music is performed and appreciated, willing to experiment with new music form using their instrument to innovate composition. During this period, they had a general set of guidance of characteristics that most of composers follow. Music this period was show many innovation on how the music is performed and appreciated. 20th century music style included impressionistics, 12-tone system, neoclassical, jazz, concert music, surrealism, jazz music, electronic music, new romanticism, and minimalism. Activity number 3. Pick at least 3 philosophers in their theories and how they contributed in music. First, Friedrich Nietzsche. He was a German philosopher who became one of the most influential of all modern thinkers. He composed several works for voice, piano, and violin, beginning in 1858 at the Scalforza in Hamburg, when he started to work on musical compositions. His attempts to unmask the motivates that underlie traditional Western religion, morally, and philosophy deeply affected generations of theologians, philosophers, psychologists, poets, novelists, and playwrights. He also said that without music, life would be a mistake. Second, Arthur Schopenhauer. His philosopher of music was influential in works on music theory changed over time and became more aligned with Schopenhauer's thoughts over the course of his life. Arthur had started that music was more important than libretto in opera. He also recognized the connection between human feeling and music which restore all the emotions of our most nature and from their pain. And lastly, Johann Bach Sebastian. He was a German composer and musician of the late Baroque period. He composed 1,000 pieces of music. He is known for instrumental compositions such as the Cello Suites and Brandenburg Concertos, keyboard works such as the Goldberg Variation, the Well-Tempered Clover, and Toccata and Fugue in D minor, and vocal music as the St. Matthew Passion and the Mass in B minor. Since the 19th century Bach revival, he has been generally regarded as one of the greatest composers in the history of Western music. So, that's all. Again, my name is Emerson Manalili Gamboa from BPED 2A. Thank you for listening.